there's a lot of stuff going wrong right now that it's all focused on the wrong side of the settlement sheet.
Yeah.
This should be on how to incentivize sellers not to make buyers more, more excited and create more buyer demand. If you are not getting educated about current real estate market conditions, whether you're in title, insurance, mortgages, obviously a real estate agent, or give anyone any sort of advice around housing, you're doing yourself and your client base a disservice. This is the Knowledge Brokers Podcast. I'm Tom Toole here with Lisa Chinatti. And Lisa, we're going to start on a more somber note today. Steve Harney from Keeping Current Matters passed away yesterday. Very sad news. Hit a lot of people across the industry. And I know you've had the pleasure to see Steve speak. I've seen him speak a number of times at Boomtown Unite. He obviously has done a lot of stuff with the Tom Ferry organization. And the thing about Steve that I found so impressive wasn't his knowledge. It was his passion to get the proper information out there to consumers because of all the noise in the marketplace. In 2019, he challenged Gary Vaynerchuk to a debate after Gary Vaynerchuk told everyone it's a stupid idea to buy a house and a bad use of capital, because Gary Vaynerchuk's talking about entrepreneurs like himself, not the average U.S. person. And one of the things Steve always talked about was how buying a home can impact net worth. That was one, you'd see these charts from him all the time, that lifetime renters versus people that bought homes, they would change the trajectory of their family's wealth. And there was a tweet he put out, and then I'll kick it to you, Lisa, and it was one of the last things he put out. And it said, people ask me why I'm so obsessed with showing that housing values in this country are stable. And the reason, and then he goes on to share some data that about what's going on with consumer confidence in home prices. And it shows that 22% of Americans still believe home values will depreciate over the next 12 months. That was double the pre-pandemic percentage. And that might cause people to hesitate in either buying or selling this year. And he would constantly put this information out there, really, for the average person in the U.S. that, people would joke around about the American dream. And that's, I think, why he challenged Gary Vee to that debate, because I look back at the history of my family and buying real estate, when I have a grandmother from Barbados, right? She met my grandfather in World War II and just moved here, never went back home, which is pretty wild when you think about it. They bought a home and that changed their life, and it changed the trajectory of our entire household and our family. So
right.
Very sad to see Steve go. And he was really a champion for, the people that I know you and I and Byron really try to serve on a daily basis. So nothing but well wishes to him and his family, his son, Bill. I know he's got some grandkids. Lisa, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I think you've said it best. A legacy and a passion that I know will live on well beyond his passing. I think if anyone ever really does some research about his journey within the real estate industry, it's been impressive literally from start to finish. His knowledge, his insights, and I think the way that he's been able to articulate the information, both for consumers and for agents alike, is second to none. So I think it's a loss that we will feel within the industry for a while. But I'm confident that his legacy is going to live on. And yeah, sad.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like he was an inspiration for this podcast at a basic level. I mean, I remember the first time I saw him speak at the Tom Ferry Summit, Tom would, lovingly call him the Oracle of real estate. And it would, it really hit home how much you need to know, because he looked at it, I think, similarly to how you and Byron and myself do, that we have an obligation to get the word out. It's not just we're going to see how these things go and hopefully sell a couple houses, but there's a greater purpose here, which people may laugh when they hear that from real estate agents. I'm a big believer in that. I've seen that early on in my career, that there is a way to help people in this job and give them some guidance. And he was one of the first people that really hit home with that, and stressed, like, hey, you got to know your stuff, guys, because if you don't, then they're going to listen to the headlines and the news and everything else. And so, I just, sending a lot of love to his family today. It's a tough thing to lose a parent, lose a father figure, lose someone that's important to you. And he had a major impact on way more people than he may even realize.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing to note is all of the work that he did to give back. I know he was a huge proponent of Habitat for Humanity, which is a cause that speaks to my heart dearly and something that I'm passionate about as well. So I think understanding that his impact was far more than just in the real estate space that we know it, but truly extending to home ownership at its very core. So yeah.
We'll miss you, Steve. So on that note, we're going to have a rough transition here, Lisa. There's no good way to do this. So let's just get into the pod. And one of the things I think, Steve would always look at is like, what's the government saying? What are they putting out there? So we had the State of the Union address last night. And this is not a political commentary by any stretch, but there was a plan that got unveiled by President Biden last night, talking about how he wants to institute a plan where it's a $5 or $10,000 credit. I want to be clear because you have to. We were even talked about this at the beginning of the prep here for the show, and last night during the State of the Union, the president's calling for a $10,000 tax credit for both first-time home buyers and people who sell their starter homes, and it would be a $5,000 credit for 2 years. That's how it would work, targeting middle-class first-time home buyers, and it's to prompt. The idea behind it, I get. Like, you want to prompt some activity in the market. This is a playbook from when he was vice president in 2009 when Barack Obama did the same thing. He's also calling for 2 million plus homes to be constructed. And, I hear this plan and like, okay, great. I'm glad we're finally talking about housing.
Yep.
But I don't know about you. I don't think we need more demand in the market. We need more housing. We need more supply. And even 2 million homes. I mean, how long is it going to take to construct 2 million homes? I don't know that does the job either, because not a lot of places like Boston or Philadelphia, as an example, there's even the ability to build these properties. What do you think about this plan? Like, I'm glad they're talking about it. I just don't know that it's targeting the right people.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think that exactly what you're saying is spot on. Bringing housing to the forefront is important. I think instead of focusing on credits and rebates and whatever we're going to call it for buyers with the intention, I think my understanding is the intention was to essentially lower the interest rate by like a point and a half, is I think the stat that I saw around it. I think that they needed to do more to focus on sellers and maybe reducing at a capital gains tax, or some of the other taxes that are keeping people in homes a little bit longer than they normally would, or providing that credit to people who are making moves who already own homes, because those are the ones that are locked in. And you're 100% correct. Buyer demand is already insane. My fear with it is that by further incenting buyers, we're actually going to further create more trouble. We're going to drive up prices even further. It's, the affordability issue is not just one facet. There's so many different facets to it right now. And I think good intent, but I think it's missing the mark.
I agree with you, and I don't think it's good intent, because the good intent would be to target sellers. I mean, this is something that might get people's attention. Like, it sounds great, and I certainly can appreciate that. You look at the reaction that came out. So there was the Mortgage Bankers Association, and their president, Bob Brokesmith, explained that while they're going to review everything in depth, and it welcomes the focus on reforms that can expand housing supply, he came out and said the MBA has significant concerns that some of the proposals on closing costs and title insurance would undermine consumer protections, increase risk, and reduce competition, and suggestions that another revamp of these rules is needed depart from the legal regime created by the Congress and the Dodd-Frank Act, and will only increase regulatory costs and make it untenable for small lenders to compete. So now you've got a couple things getting touched here, because we had that banking crisis, right, where we saw some small banks fail, Silicon Valley. You're going to see more of this, and capital gains tax. I think you hit the nail on the head there. There's going to be, you look at who controls the wealth right now, and they're talking about it's the boomers, right?
Yep.
And you look at the 1099 exemption. So roughly what this means, and I know this well, is that if you're married, right? So you and Steve Chinatti decide to sell your home in 20 years from now. Let's say that's what it is. You can. There's a $500,000 gain that can be kind of your, but that's it.
Right.
So if someone's been in their home 30 years, right? I've got a lot of neighbors that are in this position. They bought their homes in the 80s and 90s. Like I see them all the time. They're still not even close to selling. And their value of their homes, I know what they bought them for. I mean, they're up well over $500,000. So you can depreciate stuff, and there's some accounting math that can be done. And there's a lot of factors with this, but you got to raise that threshold for a lot of people, because if you're getting hit with a tax bill and you've got a 3.25% rate on your home, and now you're getting charged 28% capital gains tax on, let's call it $1 million, right? So that $1 million just went down
Yep.
to, let me do the math here, it's going to be $720,000 right off the bat. All of a sudden, like, what's the point of moving? Like, this is the challenge here that people don't want to talk about, is that the rate decreases we saw during COVID have had such, this is a great example of unintended consequences. I don't think anyone thought this was going to happen. Clearly, it was probably the right thing to do at the time, but we're paying for it now, and it's been really challenging. So I don't like the plan, because it's going to create more of what we already got, which is buyers bidding against each other. And then you factor in what the DOJ is doing. Well, maybe the DOJ should stop. I mean, they're making it even tougher if they decouple commissions and buyers have to pay that. Well, now, great, there's more buyer demand and you have to pay more. There's a lot of stuff going wrong right now that it's all focused on the wrong side of the settlement sheet.
Yep.
This should be on how to incentivize sellers, not to make buyers more excited and create more buyer demand.
I'm with you. I don't know. I'm gonna hope that they stop and reflect and get it right. Slight pivot, but maybe not totally. Did you see the news that the plaintiffs in Burnett Sitzer have requested payout of their fees?
Yes. Maybe that's why Nick Bailey got relieved of his duties a couple weeks ago. I don't know. I mean, I still think that's a bad move, but it's just like there's so much stuff going on right now, and the main issues, right? And we talk about this a lot in our businesses. The main issues are, we need more supply, and affordability is a challenge. I mean, that's probably the two things that we have here.
Yeah.
I don't see any of this stuff really helping with either of those.
We know that in 2024, your business operations will be more important than ever. Once I figured this out, my business was able to scale and take off. See, generating leads is one thing, but getting that deal across the finish line while keeping everyone happy is another story. Enter Mosaic, everything you need once a lead becomes a client. Mosaic picks up where CRMs leave off to streamline the client experience and maximize your productivity. It's the operating platform that gives agents and teams everything they need to stay organized and proactive throughout the entire transaction process and beyond. Transaction management, forms, AI-powered collaborative search, client retention capabilities, and advanced analytics for your business. In other words, you can use Mosaic to create a powerful flywheel for your business. It will help you close every deal, boost your profitability, and generate more repeat and referral business. If you need a better way to run your business, check out the link below and learn how Mosaic can help you today.
No, I don't think any of it is. And I think from a legislative perspective, I think we've got to take some action on getting all of the stuff around commissions to shake out. I think incentivizing sellers, builders is one part, but I think we talk about the same things all the time. We've got to incentivize affordable construction. The average price of new construction here in Mass is above 1.5 right now, and that's not attainable to the average person, right? The average home buyer. So would love to see some stuff come out that directly impacts that and has a positive impact without the negative impacts. And to your point, I think lowering rates during COVID was important. I think where they missed the mark is they left them too low too long.
That I agree with.
And we needed to do it for the short term to kind of keep things going, but it was too low too long. And I don't know, I almost wonder if it's like my diet journey, right? I didn't gain my fluff overnight. I'm not going to lose my fluff overnight. Oh. And so, I still think we're in for years before it corrects, because it's going to take us maybe even twice as long to truly unravel it, just because of the way that the cycles work with it. Yeah.
Well, Jerome Powell agrees with you. And this is like what I don't get. So you have President Biden saying one thing last night. On Thursday, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, he spoke before the Senate Banking Committee. And this is on, and by the way, again, if you're not following Lance Lambert on the Resiclub, like, he just gives you all the information you need. This is right from his website. Very, very helpful. So Jerome Powell twice made the point that he believes the U.S. housing market is undersupplied and will remain so for years to come. Here's what he said specifically in response to a question from John Tester, the U.S. Senator from Montana. There's two big things going on. One is we have this big underlying shortage of housing, and it's due to things like difficulties in zoning. It's more difficult for builders to get people and labor and materials. There's a ton of things happening because of the pandemic and because of inflation, because of higher rates, and those in the short term are weighing on the housing market.
Right.
But as rates come down and that all goes through the economy, we're still going to be back to a place where we don't have enough housing. So, isn't this the person that's supposed to be advising the policymakers about what to do? And everything he identified there, I mean, you and I are identifying the same issues. And now it's like, well, yeah, let's just have more buyers come into the market. And so this is where I get concerned, is I don't think anyone's really captaining the ship here. And they're just looking for stuff that's going to appeal to the masses that may not actually impact the challenge that we really see right now with the housing market.
Agreed. 100%.
So bad plan. I'm just gonna come out and say it. I don't think it's a good plan. Hopefully it doesn't get passed. I think that's going to create more problems than not. And then when you look at this stuff, now BAM did a great job on talking about where the predictions are, because everyone revised their predictions this week, Lisa. So there's a chart here. Haley, if you can put it up, it's the U.S. home price expectations for Fannie Mae. And then what I liked about this chart is they gave you like the low, in terms of like the lowest prediction, then the high, and then like the median of the board, which I think is really important. You don't want to just look at like the high or the low. You want to look at all the data appropriately. And what we're seeing here is that the average that we're expecting prices to go up this year is 3.8%, followed by 3.4% in 2025 and 3.9% in 2026. But if you look at the most pessimistic and the most optimistic, the range is anywhere from price increases from 8.1 to 33.8%. Is that going to help affordability at all? I mean, this isn't going the other way.
Nope. We already hit bottom. I think we've been saying that for a while. We're on the back. We're going back up in our next housing market already. So
how are you sharing this with consumers? I mean, this is, I think, a good topic for knowledge brokers that want to understand how to communicate this. I know we've developed a tool that I'll share in a little bit, but Lisa, you've got 100 agents on your team.
Yep.
Between the two of us, between the three of us with Byron jet setting all over the country, we've got 200 agents we're working with collectively, roughly. So I've got 50 folks that we're trying to coach up on this stuff, obviously trying to educate the market. What are you doing now, seeing these revised projections? Because a lot of people said housing was going to be flat this year, and everyone revised. Redfin revised their predictions. Zillow revised their predictions. Everybody has.
Yep.
What are we doing to communicate that to consumers? Because like Steve Harney said, we got to get the word out. And some people still think prices are going to come down. 22% of Americans, which bananas to me. But so what are you doing to get the word out to the people that come in touch with Chinatti Realty?
It's a great question. So we're just going deep into local market trends. We're pulling up reports of showing year over year stuff. Inventory for us, I know that this has been kind of an interesting debate, especially with Byron being in Florida and having slightly different market dynamics. But we're showing some big differences between our urban markets and our suburban markets, where a lot of our suburban markets are currently down in inventory by double-digit percentages. And what we know is that supply is still not nearly keeping up with demand. We're able to lean into the facts of the numbers and the data. We're looking at, I just was pulling some reports again last night, and we're over 3 offers again for every buyer before we get accepted. And that's a really strong point when you can kind of be able to articulate that to consumers, that this isn't a market where stuff is selling under asking again. And you can just look at the year over year averages. So for us, it's straight data, right? I know you take a little bit of a different approach, but for me, it's numbers and understanding them and coaching our agents on how to be able to articulate what trends mean and how current trends impact with historical trends, and when those same trends happened in the past, what was the outcome?
Absolutely. Well, and I think that's what you got to look at, right? So I love what you're saying there. And I'm also a believer that, and Logan Motoshami said this when he filled in for me on the pod. And it was, he was a loan officer, and he gets away from the rate conversation and what's your payment. And the other thing I find, and I've had this with sellers too, the average consumer doesn't understand cash flow. And what I mean by, and in a lot of cases where, you have a seller that their home's vacant, they're paying a mortgage on it, and they don't want to adjust the price. And I'm not, that's not, sometimes there's reasons not to, but every month that's vacant, that's costing you money. So let's say you got a mortgage payment of $3,000, you got, utility costs, everything else. So if you take an offer $10,000 less than the asking price today, or you hold out and get your price in 3 months, you might be breaking even. And there's a lot more risk there because the property's vacant, right? These are just numbers and facts. So I'm a big believer in something we've developed here at our team. It's not hard to do. Anybody can do this. We call it the cost of waiting, because there is a cost to that for a lot of folks. And what it does is we take the Fannie Mae predictions. Let's say home prices go up 4%, right? So we look at that 4% year over year. Let's say your budget's $500,000 and you're putting 10% down, and rates are coming in at, let's call it 6.5% today. So you get the buyer that says, I'm going to wait for rates to come down to like the sixes. So at those numbers, their principal and interest is going to be $2,844. And this is all in a spreadsheet. And then
what was the purchase price on that?
500,000.
Okay.
10% down. And assuming a 6.5% rate, we're seeing that getting quoted locally here. So that means, that means also prices are going to jump up, let's say 2% in 6 months. Because 6 months is realistically, when someone says they're less than 6 months out, they should be out actively looking. That's my view, because it takes 60, 90 days to close. There might be a lease back. So let's say that they're kicking it to the fall. That's really what we're talking about here. So they do that. So let's say in 6 months, the prices go up 2%. So you're at 510. And let's say rates come down to 6.25. I don't think rates come down much more than that. I know we've talked about that, maybe high fives by the end of the year. So your expected payment, you're really saving literally $20 a month. That's the difference. But then there's the lost equity on a monthly basis that you're losing, which is something, again, channeling my inner Steve Harney here. That's something he always talks about. And then what if they're paying rent? Right. And this is the thing no one looks at. So let's say they got a $2,000 a month rental payment. So all of a sudden, they're losing out on an equity gain of about $1,600 a month. The rental payment is $2,000 a month. So it's really costing them about $3,650 a month to wait, because they're paying someone else's mortgage. They're not paying down their debt. So that 6 months times 3,600, I mean, do the math, right? I mean, you're talking about, close to 20 grand is what it ends up costing, but people don't look at it that way. And it's not that, and maybe they are, I'm not saying this is everybody, but the average person doesn't. They worry about paying too high of a price, or what if rates come down? And the reality is cash flow is a factor for buyers and for sellers. Now, if you're in a home, this doesn't really apply. But for the people that are renting, saying that's a better idea, and we know, I think first-time home buyers are the ones that have been shut out the hardest in this market. That's the challenge that you're dealing with. So if you're not looking at these predictions and then sharing in a way that consumers can understand, you're missing the boat. And that's what knowledge brokers should be doing. So I think either one of these approaches are going to work. But if you're not doing that, then, what are you doing? How are you advising people? How are you guiding them? And the answer is you're probably not.
100%. I think it's for me, I think much like Steve Harney, that it's always super impactful to think that the biggest indicator of long-term wealth is the ability to own real estate. And I think that that's something that agents need to really be able to articulate in a way that's not salesy and not pushy, but helps consumers understand, to your point, the appreciation level. And it's always long-term. And I think that that's often where consumers can get lost. And it's an agent's responsibility to kind of be able to explain that you can't ever look at it in 1 year or 2 years. You have to really be able to look at it in 5, 7, 10-year increments. So I agree. You have a smart tool. I know I've told you that. Smart tool.
Hey-o. Never heard a tool joke before. Good job, Lisa. Went to an all-boys high school. Let me tell you, you got a lot of work to do if you want to make better jokes like that.
That was amazing.
This is going to be all weekend. I'm going to be getting text messages from Lisa. Like, I thought of one. Oh, nope, heard that one. Try again.
It's going to become like a sport now. Totally. Tool jokes.
I mean, it's you have a high bar to get to, Lisa, and I know you're a high achiever, so you're probably going to work for it.
An A player. I'm going to aim to be the A level of the tool jokes now.
I mean, that's if that's where you want to spend your time. Good luck. That's what I have to say. I think you can. So you brought up something there, we've been talking about, this was not planned, but you brought up something there about this A player thing,
Yep.
right? And, in this kind of market, what we just went over, that's what A players are going to do.
100%.
That's what high achievers are going to do. And I'm going to give you this quote. We actually played this at a team meeting yesterday, and it's from Nick Saban, right? And Steve Jobs has a similar quote
Yep.
where high achievers want to be around other high achievers, and they don't like mediocre people. And mediocre people are afraid of being around high achievers because they're trying to slide by, and they don't want to be around them either. How does that apply to this kind of knowledge? Like I mean, obviously we're seeing a lot of agents leave the business right now. I think it's been like 10,000 agents a month, according to NAR. I'd have to look up the stats here.
Yeah.
What if you want to be a high achiever in real estate? And then we'll get into the jobs data and some affordability stuff. What advice does Lisa Chinatti have for these people? Because I think this is a time where, think about all the stuff we just talked about. There's a lot of confusion in the market, and the folks that really commit to being knowledge brokers, I believe, are high achievers, are A players.
No.
How do you define that? What advice do you have for people that want to get to that level? They want to move from a B to an A, because that's a big jump.
Yeah. So this was actually, I think, so I shared it on one of my 5 a.m. calls this week, as I've kind of been going through it. And so for me, it was defining out for us. It's not, here's the interesting thing. I don't necessarily define an A player as a top producer. They don't necessarily have the top volume. They don't necessarily have the top GCI, but they are committed to continually learning, to delivering the highest level of service, to doing the things that they know are going to be in the best interest of the consumer and everybody that's on their team. And I'm super clear that even if you're not running a team like you and I are, that every single agent is a part of a team, and that team might be their title team, it might be their lending team, it could be as a part of the team with the buyer and the seller. And so it was, my other tie back in my 5 a.m. call this week was to Nicole Malkowski, who spoke at the Elite event in Orlando last week. And I'm tying it back to her wingman contract. And I'll share that real quick. I just pulled it up when we started going there. So the wingman contract represents the gentleman's handshake and the gentlewoman's agreement that says, this is our culture and our standards of behavior. It's an inherent and often unspoken promise to each other that our actions will always represent the mission, the professional standards, and the values of the whole team. Adherence to the wingman contract enables every member of a team, regardless of their level of responsibility and authority, to make agile, decisive, and independent decisions that always align with a team's goal and collective best interest. That's super powerful to me, right? Like, I think between looking at that, I think that inherently all of those are A players. And like I said, it's not tied to GCI. It's not tied to volume, to units, to anything like that. I think it's how do you show up as a professional? How do you become trustworthy and everybody knows that you're committed to being the best?
I love that. And I love how you preface that, because I think everyone listening probably knows that one person in their market that does a lot of business and doesn't do it in a way that's going to reflect well in 5 years.
Yep.
And that's what I mean. The people feel like and I'm talking like, go talk to their customers, go talk to some of the client interaction, look at their reviews that they're getting, because you can do a lot of business in a really aggressive, negative way.
Yep.
And I've seen this when you're running an organization, people come and go all the time. I mean, that's just how it is. We're in a business with a very high failure rate. And sometimes you get masked by productivity, meaning that you think they're more valuable than they are. And then you see what actually goes on. And it's like, wow, I would have never put up with that if that happened. So I think that's a great point, Lisa. And what Nick Saban said in this quote, this is like a minute-long quote. This is like one of the best things I've seen. And Steve Jobs said this too, that A players like to work together and they don't tolerate B work. Yep. And you can see people kind of going through the motions sometimes. And it's like, what are you doing here? You're not really representing these people. And it's like almost like offensive to them in some ways. We talked about at the beginning of the show, that obligation to help people. Some people don't look at it that way in this business. That's why they don't have a long track record. What Nick Saban said was that one day you're going to get into an organization where they want the right people on the bus and the right people off the bus. And I think that's, you talk about the moldy strawberry sometimes, or like that circle of safety from Simon Sinek, where you got to worry about interior threats as well as exterior threats. And at some point, everyone in their life gets to a place where someone tries to help them, whether it's a mentor, it's a coach, it's maybe your parents, right? A role model, somebody Doesn't have to be working at a team or a company, but you're going to get inside somewhere where someone tries to either level you up or get you out. And that's one of those like pivotal moments in your life where it's like, hey, what kind of person do I really want to be and how am I showing up every day? I think you said it really well. It's not always about numbers. It's not always about production. It's about how do people feel when they get done working with you? And no matter what that capacity is, that could be us as team leaders. It could be somebody as a transaction coordinator. They felt really good about the attention to detail. They had a great experience with a lender, right? How many bad lender experiences are out there right now? It goes, and you talk about the team. I think it's who you align yourself with for the right reasons.
Yep.
How many times you've been approached by someone who wants to do some co-marketing with you on the lending side, and there's no way you'd refer your clients to them. That's not an A-player move just to take the money and take the money grab. So I love that here. And I think that's really what you want to look at, how you're showing up, how you're doing things, because how you do anything is how you do everything. We've heard that a lot before. So very cool stuff. Speaking of that, I would imagine players are paying attention to the jobs data and affordability right now, Lisa. So share with us your research. I know you've been in the lab all morning doing this here. What you're seeing with the jobs report, what it means, and how that's going to affect the market as we head into March, April, May here. Really the time where you better be focused on conversations, appointments, and sales if you're a real estate agent, because this is go time right now, especially for people like us in the Northeast.
Totally. All right. So high level, on the surface, it looks like things were stronger than expected. There was a forecast of 198,000 new jobs being created last month, but on the surface, the report showed 275,000 new jobs. So super important, always looking below the surface, right? So the reset or when they go back and reassess what actually happened, they actually lowered for January and February. December and January, because we just reported February. They actually decreased 167,000 lower. So the over alignment or the overgrowth in February of 275 was kind of offset by some of the reductions that had happened for January and December. Also, interestingly, unemployment rate rose to an over 2-year high of 3.9%. So super interesting to see as you really look beneath the surface of what's going on, that it does appear as though maybe it's getting a little bit softer. It also ties in, I know I sent you an article this morning, for the first time in, I think, if my memory is correct, 10 years, first time in 10 years, the average FICO score or credit report rating went down by 1 point. And so 1 point isn't necessarily raising the alarm bells yet, but definitely starting to show that there's increasing consumer debt and some affordability issues happening across the board. Your take?
Since April, we have uploaded new and sought-after courses, content, and tactical assets for your business into the BAMX platform. Not articles behind a paywall that only pontificate to you what you should think and do, but education that actually shows you how to do what you need in today's market. Every day, we continue to add more content into BAMX and our private Facebook community. Content that works, content that our members have exclusive access to daily. It's why over 1,500 of you and climbing have joined us in BAMX. It's also why tomorrow's price is guaranteed to be higher than today's. That's called inflation. Do not wait any longer. Use code Knowledge Brokers and join the thousands of agents taking their business to the next level today. Code Knowledge Brokers for 10% off. See you in BAMX.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at this inflation battle that the Fed's had, and we haven't seen consumer spending really slow down a lot. And one of the biggest factors when it comes to a credit score is the percentage of usage on your credit card. So what I see that as is that a lot of people are buying now and paying later, and it's they haven't adjusted their lifestyle based on inflation. Or we also know that wages haven't caught up. I mean, that's one of the there's some validity to what the Fed is trying to do to bring inflation down, because wages haven't caught up. I mean, there was an article that BAM put out where I think it was like an 80% increase in what it costs to buy like a home at the median price point since the pandemic. So this is something that, the people that have jumped in and actually bought a home, I mean, and you got to look at your trajectory with income, right? You're someone in your 30s or 40s. Your 40s are typically your highest earning period in your lifetime. That's when you bring in the most money. That's historically what, not always the case. This is just a historical trend. And from talking to other people and talking to our lenders, people are utilizing credit cards a lot more than they have been, which may be good, may be bad. Probably bad would be my view. I'm pretty fiscally conservative there, but it's 1 point. It's not a big deal, but this is the first time it's happened in a long time. You got to look at that, right? And
Yep.
there has been some stress. I mean, just with gas prices, food prices. I mean, there's all these things. Obviously, shelter, which you can't put that on a credit card, but you pay money there, you put other stuff on a credit card. That's usually how it works. So I think we got to be mindful of, like, 1 point isn't a big deal, but if that continues, then there's a bigger problem here. I mean, it's always like the first blip, and that's when you want to start paying attention.
Yeah, and charge-off rate was slightly up, which means when the credit card companies just wipe their hands of the debt and say, we're not going to get paid, we're kind of taking it as an L. To your point, the increase in wages only increased a very, very small amount. I think it was 0.1%. So wages seem to be flattening out, while inflation, not so much.
Well, and it's the first move in unemployment in 4 months that's seen it go higher, and it's at its highest level in the last 2 years. I mean, a lot of people have been surprised that the job market has been as resilient as it has been, because you're talking about consumer spending, affordability, all these things. Well, like, who's paying these jobs? And I imagine there's probably a couple things happening. We live in this era of the side hustle, and I think you and I probably deal with this more than most people, where one of the questions I ask folks when we bring them on is like, hey, Lisa, I don't like surprises. So what would surprise me about hiring you if we were to move ahead? And they say, what do you mean? I said, do you have another job you're going to be working specifically while you're supposed to be doing this? Because that's the biggest surprise. And the reason is that we see younger generations, Gen Z specifically, they love side hustles. But what sometimes I don't get is the side hustle was like, I'm driving Uber, I'm doing DoorDash, and I'm not saying if that's what you got to do to get through like your first month or two in real estate, fine. I lived in my parents' basement my first year, so that would be kind of like the opposite of a side hustle, but staying focused on one thing. But I made some sacrifices there, right? That's kind of what it is. And fortunately, I was 22, so it wasn't like didn't have like kids and stuff. You know, it's a different time. But so what gets me about this in the real estate industry is that people think that they can work another job and then be really successful at this. And I don't know about you. We've been in coaching a long time. I don't see any coaching classes out there that are crushing it part-time in real estate, or drive Uber and sell 50 homes a year. Like that's not what's going on. And the reality is, if someone took one sale and focused on closing that sale, they could probably make as much as they would make in 2 or 3 months driving Uber or DoorDash, but they don't see it that way because they're looking at the immediate gratification. And, you know, this is why the failure rate is what it is. So I think a lot of that has to do with now some of these people, we've seen a lot of agents, and it's not just real estate, but there's other jobs like real estate, right? So I think, you know, financial advisors are kind of in the same boat. Like people, and they, you know, they have a very high failure rate. And there's a lot of jobs like that. And when people try to balance both, or they make these crazy demands from their employers, I was talking to a friend of mine. This person runs a gym, and she was hiring for like a weekend receptionist. And the person for the weekend receptionist said, well, yeah, I just left my other job because they wouldn't give me 6 weeks paid vacation. I said, wait a minute. And I'm dropping my kid off at this person's house. So I'm like, when does anyone get 6 weeks? I don't take 6. Do you take 6 weeks vacation? I don't take 6 weeks vacation.
I don't take 6 days vacation.
Yeah. I mean, that's my point, right? So, you know, there's an expectation of, I get all this time off, and I think some of these people may be filing for unemployment now because the side hustle wasn't working for whatever reason. I think that may have something to do with the filings, that there was a lot of this going on. They didn't file, and that's obviously a factor here as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I always tell folks with real estate in particular, you get out of it what you put into it. You don't need superhuman skills. You don't need a fancy degree or education. But if you want to be paid like a CEO, you have to work like a CEO. And I don't know any CEOs who drive Uber on the side. I don't know any professional athletes who drive Uber on the side. So just saying, that's my personal spin.
What about 6 weeks vacation? You know any CEOs that take 6 week vacation? I mean, maybe some of them do. I don't know. Usually the vacation for them is like, I'm going to go like play golf and then I have 2 hours of phone calls I need to make, which isn't much of a vacation. Kind of
Facts.
sounds like my vacations. I don't know about you. I
Yeah,
mean,
same.
so it's, I mean, that's the reality of being a business owner, and every real estate agent is a business owner, whether they want to, you're on a team, you're an individual, it doesn't matter. You own a business and you got to treat it that way. So,
100%.
you know, and these reports you shared here, Lisa, I think they kind of reiterate what we said at the top of the show, which is this plan from the administration. That's not going to solve any of this stuff. That's
No.
going to just make it more challenging. So there's got to, I mean, and Logan Monashami, I keep bringing him back to what we talked about. He's very pro inventory. He said that on the daily Housing Wire podcast. We got to see inventory grow here, and I don't know how to unlock it. I mean, other than you can unlock it in your business, which I know you and I are working on very diligently. I think we're neck and neck right now, Lisa, with listings for the year, by the way. I think I'm within one listing of you guys, and in terms of our team. But you can unlock it in your business. I don't know how it gets unlocked at a broader scale, and that still is the biggest challenge right now because of the lock-in effect, and it's not going away.
Agreed.
What do you think about this silver tsunami that people keep talking about? I mean, what's your view on that? I've got a very clear opinion, but so I've seen some agents like, hey, the inventory's coming. And I'm like, where? Like, what the hell are you talking about? What's your face says it all. Explain.
Yeah, no, I don't. Who did we have on the pod? A couple of maybe 8 weeks ago or so. We had
I think
somebody.
it was Lance. It was Lance.
Was it Lance?
Lance Lambert.
I agree with that stance 100%. It's not coming. I don't think it exists. Maybe in some of the rural areas, maybe out in the western parts, but it's for us, it's not coming. I'm a hard no.
Well, and Lance did a really nice job on this. Haley, I'm going to send you the chart for this to put up. So he showed the cumulative change in the number of baby boomer homeowner households estimated by Freddie Mac and the decline between now and 2035. This is a 12-year model here, which I love.
Yep.
The expectation this year is 300,000 of these 9.2 million homes come on the market. Then another 300,000 next year. It's going to be gradual because, to your point, we're talking about, you're in this house. We've got the capital gains issues, all these things. This is who you need to unlock. This is the only thing to be unlocked right now. And what I've seen, we're about to get to a point where there's a big transfer of wealth from boomers to the next generation. We're not there yet. I don't see it happening over the next couple of years, but by 2035, yes, I think that's a realistic time frame. You're going to see some of these homes stay within families, stay within households. You're going to see some of this money get gifted to avoid taxes. And what's going to end up happening is like these homes eventually will come to the market, but it's not going to be anytime soon. So I think this is, if you have an agent if you hear anyone talking about this, knowledge brokers should just be sharing this information with their buyers right now, because I think some buyers believe this, that they feel like there's going to be this wave of inventory and they just keep waiting and hoping something different's going to happen. There is literally no data that supports it whatsoever. So another reason just to get in tune and why this plan's not going to work from incentivizing people with a $5,000 or a $10,000 tax credit. That's like a drop in the bucket here.
Agreed.
What else we got, Lisa? We covered a lot here today.
I've got the one that is like, it's International Women's Day. When are you going to celebrate me?
I'm going to be celebrating my wife. I'm going to be celebrating my 2 daughters. We've got a lot of great women in our team here. Obviously, and also, I think, you're in a tough industry for women because there are a lot of women real estate agents. I don't know if there's a lot of women real estate leaders.
Yeah,
So I think
it's it is.
In that regard, congratulations. Obviously you're very valued here at the Knowledge Brokers podcast, and it's shout out to all the women out there. I don't know, you put me on the spot here. I don't really have anything prepared. So.
I know. I didn't even pay attention to it until it just came across my screen.
But now I feel better. Now, I am very, I think you got to be pro women in today's world, though. And it's unfortunate you don't see more of that stuff happen, but it's great. Congrats on being a tough leader in a business full of male leaders, because there's a lot of male leaders. I think that's just how this business shakes out, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good thing. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for female business leaders across all industries in the U.S. and across the world. So I'm super excited to celebrate all of the women.
How are you celebrating today? What's your plan?
I don't know yet. Like I said, I lost track of it, so it just came across my screen. I will find a way, and I will have some fun. Maybe with a confetti cannon. Maybe some confetti cannons. Who knows?
The confetti cannons. I mean, I think you have an addiction here,
Dude,
Lisa. I mean, I see it
by
every day.
I buy them by the 100. I buy them by the case, and I've got like all sorts of different shapes and sizes. The one that I used the other day was made with real flower petals. They're biodegradable, and they smell really good.
That's what goes on at Chinatti Realty.
It was so
I got to tell you, if you shot me with a confetti cannon, I'd probably leave. That would be the end. I'd be out.
like attracts like. My people love them.
I'm not disagreeing. Just not how we do things down here in Philadelphia. So, well, look, we covered a lot here.
That was a good one.
Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Drop in the comments what you think about this housing plan. I'd love to hear what people have to say. And again, condolences to the Harney family and the folks at Keeping Current Matters. We're back next week. Go get that knowledge.